The world wasn't prepared for what was about to be unveiled, but deep down, everyone knew something had been quietly building behind the walls of BYD's factories. It wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. It was a storm that had been forming in silence, nurtured by relentless innovation, sleepless nights, and a vision so powerful it could no longer be contained. When BYD's CEO walked onto the stage, there wasn't a roar of arrogance or a spectacle of unnecessary grandeur. He didn't need that. Instead, with a quiet confidence and a fire in his voice that carried both weight and vision, he simply declared what the world had already begun to suspect. The rules had changed, and BYD was the one rewriting them. Behind him stood not just a brand, but an army, a million-strong workforce, and over 120,000 engineers who had been forging the future piece by piece, one breakthrough at a time. They had created more than cars. They had built a legacy, a new engine, a new battery, a new brain for driving. This was not just an evolution of technology. This was a revolution in motion, and the world's auto industry, once secure in its hierarchy, was about to be turned upside down. While other companies made noise, BYD moved quietly. No flashy commercials, no desperate grasp for headlines, no hollow promises meant only to sway investors. Instead, they built factories, they trained engineers, they perfected their technology in silence while the rest of the industry looked elsewhere. And when the moment finally came in 2024, that silence erupted into dominance. Over 4.3 million vehicles rolled off BYD's lines. That number was more than just sales. It was a statement. It made BYD the top electric vehicle manufacturer in the world. But the numbers, as staggering as they were, told only part of the story. What truly shook the industry wasn't just the scale of production. It was the fifth-generation DM dual-mode hybrid system, a breakthrough so efficient and so quietly radical that even Tesla was forced to take notice. The unveiling in Seoul was packed, not just with curious eyes, but with skeptics who were waiting to be proven wrong. Instead, they walked away stunned. Two models were introduced that night, the Chin-L DMI and the Seal 06 DMI. At first glance, they looked like sleek modern cars, understated but stylish. But under their hoods, something extraordinary was hiding. A 1.5-liter petrol engine designed not for speed or showmanship, but for record-breaking efficiency, sat quietly paired with a powerful electric motor. Together, they offered drivers a range that defied belief. Over 2,000 kilometers on a single tank and charge. That wasn't just distance, that was freedom. It was a redefinition of what a hybrid could be. For decades, automakers had treated hybrids as compromises. They were neither fully electric nor fully combustion. They were middle-ground solutions for hesitant markets. But BYD didn't see compromise. They saw a balance. And in that balance, they found dominance. At the heart of the fifth-generation DM system was an engine that seemed almost impossible. A 1.5-liter petrol engine producing 99 horsepower didn't sound impressive on paper. In fact, it sounded ordinary. But the magic wasn't in the raw numbers. It was in what happened when that small engine was paired with BYD's electric motor. The system came in two variants, one offering 161 horsepower for those who valued efficiency, and another with 215 horsepower for those who craved more power. But performance numbers weren't the shocker here. It was efficiency. BYD's engine achieved a thermal efficiency of 46.06%. To most people, that number might not mean much, but to engineers, it was earth-shattering. That number beat Toyota's world record. It placed BYD dangerously close to the standards achieved only in the ultra-optimized engines of Formula One cars. Most combustion engines wasted more than half their fuel as heat, but BYD's system didn't. It squeezed every drop of energy with surgical precision. It delivered over 80 miles per gallon even when the battery ran low. How was this possible? Through brilliant engineering choices like a 16.1 compression ratio, split cooling systems, precise combustion control, and the relentless elimination of internal friction. This wasn't a concept car trick. This was mass production ready. For the everyday driver, it meant fewer stops at the gas station and a smoother, quieter ride. For the auto industry, it meant the old playbook had just been ripped apart, but efficiency was only the beginning. BYD designed the system with versatility at its core. They didn't want just one kind of driver, they wanted every kind of driver. That's why they created 3 versions of their DM technology. The DMI, focused on fuel efficiency, was tailored for commuters who cared about savings without sacrificing comfort. The DMP, tuned for performance, merged electric precision with hybrid strength, delivering power for those who loved a spirited drive. And then came the DMO, built for off-road adventures. Yes, a hybrid system designed not just for highways but for dirt trails, hills, and untamed terrain. This wasn't just engineering, it was imagination turned into machinery. It was proof that hybrids didn't need to be confined to one box. They could adapt, they could serve anyone, anywhere. Backing this versatility were smart battery options. Depending on the model, drivers could choose between a 10.08 kilowatt-hours or a 15.87 kilowatt-hour battery pack. That meant 50 to 75 miles of pure electric range, enough for most daily commutes, errands, or even weekend trips without touching a drop of fuel. But the real brilliance lay in architecture. Unlike traditional hybrids where the petrol engine always led the way, BYD's system flipped the script. The electric motor became the star. The petrol engine stepped back, acting only when needed. This quiet reshuffling of roles maximized efficiency and created a smoother, more natural driving experience. For drivers, it just felt right. Effortless, clean, future-ready. And at the heart of this system was a game-changing innovation, the Blade battery. BYD's secret weapon. The Blade battery wasn't just an improvement, it was a reinvention. Instead of bulky, space-wasting cells, BYD designed long, narrow cells arranged side by side like blades. The result was more energy density, 50% more, and a structure that didn't just power the car but also strengthened it. But power wasn't the only focus, safety was. In the nail penetration test, a brutal trial where most EV batteries would burst into flames or explode, the Blade battery stayed cool and calm. It didn't burn. It didn't even smoke. It simply absorbed the test and kept its integrity. This was because BYD's battery didn't rely on volatile materials like nickel, cobalt, or manganese. Instead, it used lithium iron phosphate, a far more stable and sustainable material. And the Blade battery wasn't just safer, it was longer lasting. After 3,000 full charge cycles, it still retained 90% of its capacity. That meant fewer replacements, lower costs, and less waste for the planet. It charged faster, it resisted heat better, it lasted longer. And it did all this without sacrificing performance. The Blade battery wasn't just an innovation, it was a statement of intent. It showed what happens when ambition is matched by execution, and it left competitors scrambling to catch up. But BYD wasn't done, because in their vision, power alone wasn't enough. The modern car didn't just need a powerful heart, it needed a brain, and BYD gave it one. They introduced the D-Link architecture, a system that replaced the clutter of dozens of control units with a single, unified brain. Engine, brakes, cameras, sensors. Everything spoke through one lightning-fast core. The result was reaction times measured in microseconds. The difference between avoiding an accident and becoming part of one. This new brain didn't just control, it learned. It adapted through BYD's DeepSeek AI. Every BYD car became part of a living, learning network. Each drive collected data. Each mile made the system smarter. Every update made the experience smoother, safer, and more efficient. And because over 4 million vehicles were feeding it data daily, the learning curve was unlike anything the industry had seen before. In heavy rain or poor visibility, the system could instantly switch from camera reliance to radar and ultrasonic sensors. It adapted in real time. It thought ahead. It predicted component failures before they happened. It updated itself over the air, just like a smartphone. This wasn't technology for the sake of it. This was reliability. This was adaptability. This was trust. And trust was exactly what drivers needed in an age where cars were becoming more than machines. They were becoming companions. BYD knew that autonomy wasn't the future, it was the present. While most companies still spoke of someday, BYD was already building. Their system, D-Pilot, was real, road-tested, and rapidly evolving. It didn't just follow rules. It mimicked human decision-making. It anticipated. It adapted. It responded in milliseconds. D-Pilot came in 3 tiers: 100 for entry-level models, 300 for mid-range, and 600 for high-end vehicles. Even cars under $10,000 could now access features once reserved for luxury brands. Hands-free driving for hundreds of miles, memory-based automatic parking, high-speed navigation on autopilot, and behind it all were 5,000 engineers and 7 years of relentless development. Every day, BYD's fleet generated 45 million miles of driving data. Every car became a teacher for the next one, and every driver became part of the evolution. This wasn't an add-on feature, this was a foundation, a new way of moving, a new way of thinking. And through it all, BYD never lost sight of its mission: affordability without compromise. While others placed breakthroughs behind luxury price tags, BYD did the opposite. They built for the masses, and they delivered. Cars priced 15% lower than Tesla's Model 3, yet equipped with hybrid systems, long-range batteries, autonomous features, and centralized smart brains. Even budget models under $10,000 carried features unheard of at that price point. That was how they sold over 4.3 million cars in 1 year. Not by hype, not by luxury, but by value that could not be ignored. And while other automakers scaled back their EV plans, BYD surged ahead. They tackled range anxiety with efficiency. They tackled price barriers with affordability. They tackled safety with innovation. And they showed the world that the future of mobility didn't need to be exclusive. It could be smarter, it could be cleaner, and it could be within reach for everyone. BYD wasn't just making cars, they were reshaping the road itself, one breakthrough at a time, one driver at a time, one future at a time. The question was no longer whether BYD could compete. Question was whether anyone else could keep up, because the auto industry had long been driven by giants that believed their legacy would protect them. But legacy is heavy, and BYD moved fast. They weren't just a car company anymore. They were an energy company, a software company, a data company, and most importantly, a company with vision. That vision was what terrified the competition most. It wasn't about building the flashiest car or the most expensive electric model. It was about changing the rules of the game until no one else could play by the old ones. Every move they made seemed deliberate. Every innovation connected to the next like puzzle pieces falling into place. The hybrid system was one piece, the blade battery was another, the new centralized brain was another, and autonomy was another. Together, they formed something bigger. They formed a new ecosystem of driving, an ecosystem where energy flowed more efficiently, where intelligence guided every choice, where safety wasn't a feature but a foundation, and where price was no longer a barrier. It was this ecosystem that turned BYD into more than just a brand. It made them a movement, a quiet storm that was reshaping mobility around the world. And the shockwaves weren't limited to China. In Europe, regulators who had once been skeptical now looked to BYD as proof that sustainable technology could be affordable without sacrificing quality. In the United States, lawmakers debated whether local automakers could ever catch up. In Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia, BYD became the name synonymous with mobility for the people. Cars that were once out of reach for millions became accessible, and suddenly families who had never thought of driving an EV were charging their cars in their driveways. This was how revolutions spread, not by shouting, but by delivering, not by promises, but by proof, and BYD delivered proof in every car that rolled off its production line. The numbers told one story, the roads told another, because when people saw BYD cars covering over 2,000 kilometers on a single tank and charge, they realized that range anxiety had finally been defeated. When they saw Blade batteries shrug off brutal safety tests, they realized that fear of battery fires no longer belonged in the EV conversation. When they experienced D-Pilot guiding them safely in traffic, parking automatically, or handling highway navigation, they realized that autonomy was no longer a dream. It was reality. And it was reality they could afford. Competitors tried to dismiss it. Some said BYD's success was temporary. Others argued it was only possible because of scale in China. But denial only lasted so long. Because as sales figures grew, as awards rolled in, and as BYD cars began to dominate global streets, the truth became impossible to ignore. The future wasn't about who started the race first. It was about who adapted fastest. And BYD adapted faster than anyone else. What frightened competitors most was how BYD never stood still. Even in the moment of triumph, they were already building the next generation. While others struggled to deliver on promises, BYD released updates and upgrades faster than anyone expected. They weren't content with being ahead, they wanted to redefine what ahead meant. In their labs, engineers worked on batteries that would last longer than most people owned their cars. In their factories, robots assembled vehicles with precision and speed that slashed costs without cutting quality. In their data centers, millions of miles of driving data were being processed every single day, feeding algorithms that only got sharper and smarter. This was not a company chasing yesterday's vision. This was a company inventing tomorrow, and tomorrow was arriving faster than the world thought possible. For drivers, the change was simple. They got cars that felt smoother, cars that lasted longer, cars that cost less to run, cars that didn't compromise between power, efficiency, or safety, and cars that simply felt ready for the next decade instead of trapped in the last one. For the industry, the change was existential. It meant the rules they had played by for decades no longer applied. It meant their supply chains, their pricing models, their research cycles, their marketing strategies, all of it was outdated. And it meant that if they didn't adapt, they would vanish. History has always shown that revolutions rarely announce themselves. They build quietly until suddenly the world looks different. And BYD's revolution was already changing everything, because this was bigger than just cars. It was about energy independence. It was about reducing waste. It was about democratizing technology. And it was about showing that the future didn't have to belong only to those who could afford luxury. The future could belong to everyone. And BYD made sure of it. The Blade battery became the standard others scrambled to copy. The fifth-generation hybrid became the benchmark for efficiency. The centralized brain became the expectation for smart driving. And autonomy went from luxury to normal. This was how BYD built more than cars. They built momentum. And momentum, once started, is nearly impossible to stop. For the millions of families now driving BYD vehicles, this wasn't just about owning a car. It was about owning a piece of the future. A future where every journey was longer, safer, cleaner, and smarter. A future where cars were not just tools for travel, but companions built on intelligence and trust. A future where mobility was no longer exclusive, it was inclusive. The revolution BYD started will not end with them. It will ripple through every automaker. It will force innovation. It will challenge old assumptions. And it will accelerate the transition to a world where combustion engines are no longer the standard, but the relic. BYD didn't just bring that world closer. They opened the door to it, and now the only question left is who will walk through it fast enough to survive. Because BYD isn't waiting. They are already on the move, and the road ahead belongs to those who can move with them. The storm has arrived, the rules have changed, and the future is no longer distant. It is here, it is now, and it is being built one car at a time by BYD.